This week on the show, we're going to talk about 5 retiree regrets that we saw on another YouTube video. So let's get into it and talk about those top 5 regrets.
In football, the red zone is where a team has to make small adjustments to ensure victory. As you approach retirement, you also need to make small adjustments to ensure success. This is the Red Zone Retirement Program with registered investment advisor and enrolled agent John Mears of Mears Money Management.
Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. Thanks for hanging out with John and myself as we talk investing, finance, and retirement. And Coach, there was this interesting video that this gentleman put up. I want to say, I think he was over 65 himself. And he talked with some other retirees over the age of 70 up to 80 about some of their top regrets now that they're into retirement, been there for a couple of years. I think he was doing this for his own kind of education and then well as others. Yeah. And so it was really interesting. So I'm curious to talk about those 5 that seem to be the top 5 and see how that relates with what you see when people come in to talk with you and so on and so forth. So, and the video's blown up. He's got like 500,000 views or whatever. So very cool. So anyway, so I thought we'd talk about that this week. So see if you're game. How you doing?
Doing well. As we're recording this, baseball season's almost over. The Angels, who I had a lot of high hopes for in April, are in dead last. And that's how it goes. So I don't have to worry about being distracted during October during the World Series or anything like that. I can just get to work here.
You can just get to work. So did you check out the video? It's pretty interesting.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's interesting. And it's funny because people do. One of the great emotions that we all have in life is regret. That is something that is normal, and it can be in many different ways. And if you're an economist like me, it's simple. We always look at trade-offs. So the fact that you went to Chick-fil-A instead of to another those are regrets that you may have because it may have been a different experience. These are deeper, obviously, but it is normal for us to have regrets and or doubts or just second guessing or questioning ourselves. It's very normal. And I think it's healthy to actually bring this up. And it's also great to have stories that we can relate to other retirees as people approaching retirement. And so I'm excited to talk about this today. It's
sure.
It's actually a good topic.
Yeah. And think about regrets. I mean, last week or our last podcast, we were doing the Magic 8-Ball show. And I know Debbie regrets not saying yes and going out with you in middle school. So I'm sure she's been living with that regret. Exactly.
Every day. Every day, I'm sure she kicks herself. So
let's talk about those financial regrets.
John who?
She knows who Coach Mears is. She's got it going. All right, so here's the top 5 from these folks that he talked to. And he really cool guy, too. He seemed like he could be, much like yourself, John, he seemed like somebody you could just sit down and have a good chat with. So I really kind of dug his vibe as well. So very cool. But number 1, these people wish they had retired earlier. Not really a huge shock, I think, but interesting because so many of us, I think we're afraid to find out, like the big change from working to not is a big freaking change, right? And it scares the bejeepus out of people. And when you finally do it and you're in retirement a couple of years and you go, wow, this is great. God, I wish I'd have done this sooner, right? That's typically the feel.
Yeah, and I have multiple stories to tell about this is one item here, this one subject here. I have a client who had come in years ago. Great guy, great couple. I love them both. The wife was worried that they wouldn't have enough for retirement. The husband felt he had enough, and he's hitting 62, and he'd done a great job of saving. But the wife was worried, and that's a fair fear that people have. And we did the calculations, kind of like we've discussed in other podcasts, so we could do the dynamic distribution. The guy just wanted to make sure that whatever he's getting already in his job, getting paid on every Friday, he wanted to keep getting that same amount every Friday from here on out. And we could do it. And so the wife, I remember them sitting in my office, and the wife was still kind of struggling with this. And I just had to, at some point, I actually had to challenge her ever so slightly. And again, in a loving, caring way, but I did challenge her and I go, if not now, when is that point? What is the demarcation point? What is it you need to have so that we can then, solve for that? And she had no answer. And so she realized right then that it was okay for her husband to retire at age 62. And so far, almost 10 years later, there hasn't been a hitch in anything. They're living happily. They don't have any struggles with expenses. They're never going to run out of money. And so needless to say, it's all worked out very well for them. So I like to use that as a point of a success story of somebody who retired on time. And then conversely, we have people that and we see this struggling sometimes. And I'm going to add one more anecdote after this, but where we see this. People have worked, and then just a good friend of our family, she was retiring, and she got sick literally the week after she retired. She has since come out of it, but it was a very, very difficult health experience for her, and she almost died. And this is something where she had saved. She was in a position where she probably could have retired a little bit earlier, but that's just a scary thought of retiring and then immediately getting sick and again almost dying. The Wall Street Journal, just as happenstance would be as we're going over this, the Wall Street Journal in last Saturday's paper had a discussion about people that are in their 30s nowadays are taking these little mini retirements because they don't want to wait till they're 60 or 70. They're taking 6 months off now. The article was basically saying, well, how is that going to affect their lump sum in retirement?
Yeah, the compounding.
My response was, I don't care. If they're doing what they want to be doing right now and they can save up for it and do it, then that's okay. And we can say that. I know another advisor as people are approaching retirement, and that scary idea of, is it too soon? Is it too soon? Yeah. He actually tells them to do little micro mini retirements also. Take a month, take 2 months off, see if you can stretch that out, see what you can do to take some time off and experience what retirement might actually be like. And I had a client recently who was kind of going through this where they had to take some forced time off. It wasn't voluntary, but they're like, this is pretty good. I think I can handle this. They have the finances, and it was really kind of hitting home to them. I think I'm going to get the heck out of Dodge now. So, great topic.
I mean, very interesting, but you certainly a couple of caveats. Right? Somebody hears that and they think, well, A, I got to have a job that's going to let me take a month off. And B, the resources, like you said, if you don't have the resources, be careful.
We have to plan. So it's not something we're just doing. We're not winging it, but if we can do the math, a lot of times what's keeping people from actually taking that next step is fear, not the math. The math is there. We can kind of show how we can navigate with the math, but people are just scared. And again, it's a real emotion. I try not to discount that. This is a real emotion. But if the math is there, let's see if we can pull it off. And if you aren't willing to do it now, maybe let's just set a date. Let's set a time, not to go all Dr. Laura on people, but let's just have a date and time where we're going to revisit this and say, okay, this is our time where we're going to really, make a choice one way or another here.
Well, and if you want to get over the fear, having the math ran and knowing the numbers is a good way to start that, help, that process to get over the fear.
Talk to an advisor. That would help. Yeah,
exactly. All right. Number 2 on this list was they wish they had spent more early in retired when they first retired. And again, this kind of comes back to me thinking, okay, we probably got into retirement. We didn't spend as much. We were a little hesitant on our spending numbers. So we didn't do some of the things we truly wanted to, got a little older, and now our body won't let us do some of that stuff. And now we regret not spending it and taking doing some of those things, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's definitely something where we've talked many times on this podcast about the go-go years and the no-go years. And if you're going to retire, 65 to 80 is kind of those go-go years. 80 and beyond is really the no-go years. You just can't physically do the travel and do the stuff that you had done in the past. You just aren't capable of doing that. And many people are. They've managed to do this.
Case specific, but yeah.
But for the most part, we want to be able to use that time when we're able to travel and do activities. We want to be able to do them. And goes back again to my dynamic distribution strategy. I always tell people, a new client that comes in, I always say, running out of money is not an option. We know that. But I also tell them leaving a mattress stuffed full of money isn't really winning either. So we want to have a distribution where you're getting your money out of your accounts. You want to do that. You want to get, you've worked hard. You've done the heavy lifting. Now you want to enjoy it. And so let us figure out, hey, instead of trying to scrape by on $2,000 a month when our distribution rate should be around $4,000 a month, let's go ahead and bump that up to a level where we can enjoy ourselves a little bit more. And then we can also, through this strategy, we can also kind of take a look at, hey, if we're going to spend $15,000 or $20,000 a year, whatever that number may be, on specific vacations, we can factor that number into this as well. But yeah, I do run into this sometimes where people are scared to spend any money. Now, I do see some spendthrifts who start blowing through money, and that's not what we want to do either. But we want to make sure that we do everything, deliberate and intentional. I always say that here. We want to do it deliberately intentional. Let's use that money. Let's spend that money while we can, without going overboard.
Yeah, for sure. Number three is that they wish they had taken better care of their health, coach. And, I'll use my mom again for this one. She's 83. And she looks really good for 83. Health wise, she's pretty good, but she's got some hip and some joint issues. So she's not as mobile as she'd like to be. And there's sometimes when she's sitting too long and it makes the mobility even worse. And so she wishes that she had, taken a little bit better care of herself, especially on the mobility side. And I know we can't always control what happens to us on our health, but I think as we're getting close to retirement, getting healthy, I'm turning 53 this month, and I started losing weight at the beginning of this year because I don't want to follow in her footsteps. I'm trying to stay mobile to make sure that when I get older, I'm not having those problems. And I think a lot of people find themselves in this situation where they let their body go a little bit more than they realized, and then it comes back to haunt them.
Absolutely. And that's something that we're all going through in yours truly. My wife and I have had this discussion this year because, the weight was at a point where it shouldn't be, and we're trying to get it back where it should be while we can. Because as we all know, when we're 20 years old, we could drop 10 pounds in about 3 days. Nowadays, it takes 10 months to drop 10 pounds. So it's very difficult now. And so we want to take advantage. And as you get older, it gets more and more challenging to do so. We do see some clients that as they get older, they are less mobile. And we're talking about physically less mobile, where they have to have an old neighbor of mine. I saw them recently. They had to use the carts just to get around, and they weren't that old. They're in their 70s, which to me isn't that old. They're having to really move around in carts. They really couldn't walk anywhere. And they were normal people, but they weren't always on top of their health. And so I highly recommend that. And everybody plays pickleball. I get that, but it doesn't have to be pickleball.
Hey man, just walking. Just walk, right? Just basic movement. There's a cute little Instagram channel out there right now. I don't know if they're on YouTube or not, but I think it's a woman in her 60s, if I'm not mistaken, and her mother's in her 90s, and they post videos a couple times a week or once a week or something, and it's just basic exercises they're doing in the house around the kitchen counter or something like that. And I think the mom's like 92 or whatever, and it's great because they're just like, hey, look, you don't have to go crazy. You just have to keep moving, because that'll help with the mobility. Because think about just the basic concept of pushing yourself up out of a chair. I watched this video that blew my mind, John. It was this health instructor, and she's like, if you atrophy yourself too much and you get to a certain age, the amount of muscle it takes to just basically lift yourself up out of your chair and then to walk to the kitchen becomes difficult for people. And I was like, yes. I don't know why it hit me, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm like, yeah, my mom sometimes struggles with that, and I'm not going that route. Right.
And I can add something to this as well. I have a 95-year-old client who bowls every week. So it has, and she's just been doing this forever. And so she has,
that's why though.
As she gets older, she has minor health issues, sure, but she always recovers from them, it seems, because she keeps herself active. And I'm just so pleased with her. Again, I joke with her daughter that she can still, the mom can still beat me up if she needed to.
Oh, heck yeah, yeah,
she's so active.
That's awesome. Well, and that actually really goes to the next one as well. Number 4 on this list was they wish they had taken up a hobby. So we could use that lovely lady you were just talking about. She's got her bowling hobby, and that's kept her active, and she's rolling into her 90s. And maybe, John, a lot of people are super workaholics. It's their identity, right? It's who they are, and they get to retirement and they go, what the hell do I do now? And they don't have a thing. You need to retire to a thing.
Yes. My mother's 88 years old, and she runs and I hope she doesn't get on my case for saying it this way, but she has a little old lady Bible study that she does. Now she's 88 years old, but she has a little bit of a following. There's a group of them, and they get together. They have a great time. They're all in their 70s and 80s, and it's fantastic. They get together, even if it's only once a week, even if it's just once a week, and they chit chat. They have a group chat for them, which is kind of funny. It's just great stuff. The bowling league, bowling is low impact, easy to do. Pickleball, we joke about it a little bit because everybody seems to do it, but that's also very low impact. Gets your body out, moving around. You can do that even into as you age. And then, as you said before, there's a guy in my neighborhood. He's got to be about 85 or 90 years old, and we kind of live on a slope. And this guy walks, and we see him walking everywhere. And he again, just looks like he's in good health. I wouldn't say great health because he's older, but he's out there walking all the time, and it's easy to do. That's an easy hobby as well. I think listen to podcasts and walking around Bible studies, like I said, you can also give back to the community. And I'm a football guy. You can be part of the community by filming football games, doing stats for the baseball team, just getting out there and doing easy things. It doesn't have to command your time
Yeah,
to
exactly.
the point where you can't do anything else. Great stuff to do. Anybody can do it. And again, speaking from the local high school, we need volunteers desperately. We need people that can do any little thing, whether it's handing out meals on Friday nights to the kids, chain gang guys are going to hold the chains during. There's all sorts of stuff. Again, low impact, gets you out involved with people. Great stuff to do. There's
actually
stuff
that's fantastic. Yeah, that's great. That's some great suggestions, Coach. I like that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, so this was a great video, and then the last one, and we kind of talked about it, but I'll just circle back to it. We don't have to spend too much time on it, but it was travel. The last one on there was they regretted the travel. But if you really think about these 5, Coach, they all interplay together, right? Like if you had handled a couple little pieces, you might not have any of these. And really it starts with the plan, because if you had a strategy and you were confident in your budget and your plan or your spending strategy, whatever you want to call it, you wouldn't have probably half of these regrets. You wouldn't have the travel. You wouldn't have the, I wish I spent more. You know what I mean? It's like it all kind of plays together.
Correct. I do agree with that. If we have a written plan, it's something in black and white that we know the parameters, we know what we can work within. I do think life will be more enjoyable and allows you to do all the other stuff that you really want to do. Again, we can't say you're never going to not have any regrets.
Sure.
We want to minimize.
Exactly. A little strategy goes a long way. It's like, well, you guys, this is what John does for a living. So of course you're going to say get a plan. But I mean, seriously, think about it. You'd have a plan for doing a lot of other things. So why won't you have one for your financial retirement golden years so that you can enjoy them by having a little bit of a layout, having a little bit of structure so you know what you're dealing with. And if you need some help, John's a great resource for that. So check out this commercial. John has a couple of free books, Diffuse and Tax-Free Retirement in California, that reveal exactly how you can experience zero taxes in retirement and overcome the IRS lien on your 401k, IRA, and 403b, which could threaten your future lifestyle. These are complimentary, so all you have to do to pick these up 100% free is just stop by rescuemyretirement.net. That's rescuemyretirement.net. Fill in the basic info and he'll ship those out to you immediately. That's rescuemyretirement.net for a copy of Diffuse and Tax-Free Retirement in California. All right, it's time for the 2-minute warning here, Coach, as we wrap up the podcast this week. We got a question from Amy. She said, my dad passed away last month and I'm his only beneficiary. Sorry to hear that, Amy. He doesn't have any assets that I'll inherit other than the house and $100K in the checking account. How much should I set aside to possibly pay taxes on these items?
Zero. There's really not going to be a big tax impact, Amy. This is a common question.
Please explain.
People just don't know what the issue with the house is. A lot of tax preparers don't know how to handle the house. But what we are allowed to do per the IRS, since it's not your main home, you're inheriting it, and you get to step up in basis when you inherit the property. So let's just say it's a $500,000 house. Because you're inheriting it, your basis is $500,000. You're going to sell it at fair market value, which is on or about $500,000. So you won't have a gain or a loss. If you're not looking to have a loss on your tax return, which I've done in the past, depending on how long they've held the property, but at the very least, it's just going to be washed and you're not going to have any taxes on the house. You can take that money, you can pocket it. And then with $100,000 in checking account, that's just in cash, that's in savings or whatever. There's no taxable event there either.
Okay.
So you're really in a situation where there's not much tax issues.
So Dad did a good job, sounds like.
Inadvertently,
yeah.
But I always tell people, consult your own tax advisor just to make sure that this is all correct. But this is how I would handle it if Amy had come into me and wanted to have her taxes done right now. That's what I'd be advising her. So this is my suggestion. So again, very low tax impact. And that will help us also for our planning in the future.
Yeah.
She'll have some money in that she could use to invest and make her retirement a little bit more secure.
Yeah. So what he's talking about there, Amy, is step up in basis. Because your dad left you this after he passed, you get that new cost basis, right? So if it's $500,000 to Coach's point. Now, if you held on to it for a little while and the housing rate stayed the same and it gained more value, then you could maybe owe a little taxes on that. But if you're selling it for roughly the step up price, it should be pretty minimal. So if at all.
Yeah. And we've talked about this in prior podcasts. that the numbers like around 82% of all children that inherit their parents' houses just divest it. They don't have any interest in holding on that property. But yeah, if you're going to keep the property, then we have another discussion. But you're inheriting this property. There's at that. I assume the house is modest. It's a regular house. It's not a mansion in Bel Air, because there might be some estate tax issues at that point.
Right. That's true. I guess if it's over a certain amount, it could be a different story. Right?
Yeah. If you're living in inheriting from Jeff Bezos or something like that. But assuming your dad lived in a nice house in a nice neighborhood, there shouldn't be any tax impact at all.
Okay.
But it's a great question. Again, talk to your tax advisor, but you should have no tax issues whatsoever. And this will help with your future planning.
Thanks so much, Amy, for checking out the podcast. Sorry again to hear about your father. And of course, folks, if you've got questions, need some help, reach out to Coach. Get onto the calendar. You can find him at bookachatwithjohn.net. That's bookachatwithjohn.net. Don't forget to hit the check the descriptions below there. I can't talk today. The descriptions below in the show notes for all the links and the various things that we have doing there. You'd think I talk for a living or something. But check all that stuff out down there. If you've got some questions, need some help, and reach out to Coach here on Red Zone Retirement Program, Simple Investing, Smart Future. Buddy, thanks for hanging out. I always appreciate you.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun. Thanks, Mark.
We'll see you next time here on the podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you can catch new episodes.
Advisory services offered through Mears Money Management, Inc., an RIA registered in the states of California and Texas. California Department of Insurance License number 0685203.